Support for the Common Knowledge podcast is brought to you by puremtgo.com. You can support the show personally by going to patreon.com/common knowledge. And you can email the show at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com.
This is Common Knowledge, a Magic the Gathering podcast about improving at the game with a focus on pauper play. It's not about the cost, it's about the knowledge. Welcome to Common Knowledge. Here are your hosts, Brandon Clark and Lobbert. Enjoy this week's episode of Common Knowledge.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. This is episode 27 of Common Knowledge. I'm your host, Brandon Clark, and joined with me is the omnipotent Sean the Lobbert.
How you doing, Brandon?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great this week.
Awesome. Well, that was boring. Let's just jump into it. What's our card of the week?
I decided not to argue with you on your weird description of me this week. I think it really moved things along. Our card of
Oh, we forgot. I skipped this. I already skipped something. What are we playing?
This week I've been testing out my Lands Brew, and I'm getting ready to take that into a league, and I have been tuning Corrupt Control because I've been getting so many messages about it that I feel like I need to be more of an authority than I am.
But do you think you should put some creatures in there?
Still no. I've seen people put like Thorn of the Black Rose or Lab Rats, which I know you're all confused because no one knows what Lab Rats is. I didn't. It is a 1 black mana spell that you make a 1/1 rat, and it has like buyback for 4 or something.
That's weird.
Yeah. By the way, mic sounds way better this week.
Yeah, it does, because I have an actual mic, and I'm not just speaking into my computer's microphone, on my desktop.
It's made me really jealous, and I want to buy a new mic, I'll be honest.
We can thank the mighty Spencer Howland.
Yeah.
The benevolent. The virtuous. All right, that's enough praise for him. He got me an awesome mic, and I am indeed grateful.
What are you playing this week?
I did some more Tireless Tribe, because that's actually an addictively fun deck.
Nice.
Once you start figuring out the nuances of it, and it's pretty fun.
I hope that deck gains popularity, because I just crush it with Corrupt Control every game.
Yeah, I could actually see that. No, it's actually... I went 3-2 in a league that I just played.
Yeah.
Which is about my average. I go between 2-3 and 3-2. But I got to lose a game that I could have won because I misclicked against Kumbaya Witches.
Oh, you told me about that.
Yeah, so I had like 3 copies of Inside Out in my hand. They just tried to ping my guy like on my end step. Like I just passed the turn and they're like, deal it a damage. And I was like, okay. So I'm going to select to deal Kumbaya Witches a damage, and then I'm going to Inside Out the Kumbaya Witches, and then I'm just going to discard a random card to save my Tireless Tribe. And then I can go off, because I don't know why I don't know. I guess he just thought that, like, it's my end step, I can't go off anyway, so I'm going to make him discard a useless card.
Yeah. Which...
I don't know. I guess seems fine. Like, you can't be playing around them having excess copies of Inside Out, I guess. But
that's about all the Kumbaya Witch can do is just...
Right. But I don't know. At the same time, like, the deck is a 3-card combo. All you need is Tribe, Gush, and Inside Out, and you win.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they have a blocker, then you need the Shadow Rift or whatever. So it's honestly probably just safest to never use Kumbaya Witches until... they try to Inside Out.
You're talking about on your end step is when they activated it, right?
Yeah, my end step.
Yeah, well, they're just going to untap it anyway. The damage doesn't matter, so why not get a free card and make your life a little bit harder?
I guess, but what I'm saying is that, like, why open yourself up to the risk?
Is it a risk?
I would have won that game if I didn't misclick. Because I would have dealt 1 damage to Kumbaya Witches, switched his power and toughness with Inside Out. Kumbaya Witches is dead, and now on my next turn I can go off and I don't have to be afraid. So yeah, there's a risk. I mean, it's minimal, but honestly, like I think I think that weighing the risk of losing your Kumbah Witches to something random like that is greater than like getting a random card out of a deck out of my hand when I only need 3 cards to go off. I only need 2 cards in hand to go off. If one of those is Gush and one of those is Inside Out, I win. So getting a redundant card out of my hand doesn't hurt me as much as people might think.
But the hope is maybe you need one of those cards still, and so in the meantime, if they can get you low enough with that Tireless Tribe that you have to discard something that does matter.
Yeah, sure. I understand what the thinking is,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is the risk doesn't outweigh the reward. Like, the risk is so minimal, but the reward is also even more minimal. They're just so, like, I just think that the risk of me losing my Kumbah Witches is greater than getting a random card out of their hand that may or may not be beneficial when this deck only needs 2 to 3 cards in their hand to win.
I guess most people who don't play the deck don't think like that. They think more like I'm saying, and that's why he was doing it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to educate the world with my
Right.
wisdom, with my knowledge, giving you some common knowledge. I mean, if they're tapped out, like, that's maybe a different story, But if they've got 2 mana up, there's always that risk that they could have 2 Inside Outs in their hand. I don't know.
Okay.
I just think it's high enough that having Kumbah Witches in play, untapped, there's no way for me to deal with that card. Like, the best thing I could do with it is on their end step, tap it with Giga Drowse, and then discard a card to save my Tireless Tribe when they try to ping it. I just wouldn't ever risk losing my Kumbah Witches when it's impossible for Tribe to win with that card in play.
Okay. Speaking of a card that kind of just beats Tireless Tribe a lot of the time, our card of the week is Gutshot. Gutshot is a Phyrexian...
That was a flawless transition. What a segue. Guys, give Sean a round of applause. That was really good.
Gutshot is a Phyrexian red for an instant that deals 1 damage to any target. New Oracle text, right?
Maybe.
Well, before it was target creature or player.
Oh, yeah. And that's probably what it says now, is any target.
Yeah, I didn't even...
Well, I don't know. Can it target a Planeswalker?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I've never gut shot at a Planeswalker. I don't know.
So, this is a free spell.
You got to say it like it's written in the show notes.
Then you have to say it.
All right, fine. Free!
Thought you were going to roll your R.
Free!
There we go.
That sounded worse.
I don't think so.
I'll keep them both in. Don't edit any of this out, and the listeners can decide.
Okay. So this is great against the Delver decks. It's also good against Tribe and Elves. You can kill Spellstutter Sprite while it's trying to target one of your spells. You can also get Fairy Miscreant and Delver. Keeping them off of creatures in the early turns can really set them back enough for you to do what your deck is going to. And you can be playing any kind of deck with a free spell, right?
Yeah, that's sort of the beauty of the gut shot, is it can go into literally any deck sideboard. It's funny that you say that this is good against Tireless Tribe, because this is actually one of the common sideboard cards in Tireless Tribe.
Yeah.
Just because Spellstutter Sprites can be a bit of a nuisance, and having a free spell that doesn't take up any mana on your go-off turn, that just eliminates Spellstutter Sprite as a variable. It's just one less thing that I need to worry about because I've got a gut shot ready.
Yeah, it against that deck, it functions as a counterspell a little bit. Prevents you from getting 2-for-1 with that Spellstutter Sprite by dealing with it before it resolves. Because, in case you don't know, Spellstutter Sprite checks both when it goes on the stack and when it resolves, checking how many, I want to say spirits, because I'm looking at the words, how many fairies. I was looking at Sprite, and it made me want to say spirit. That's really annoying.
Sprite.
Do you think it's even worth talking about how this can be the last point of damage if you're one off? I don't, because I've never seen that happen. I've seen Sign in Blood kill people, but not Gut Shot.
It's also worth noting that Gut Shot can go to the face.
Yeah,
So sometimes you can just get that last damage in there if you really, really, really need it.
that's what I was just asking. Is that even worth talking about?
I don't think it is.
No.
But you were like, oh, I don't think it's worth talking about because I've never seen it happen. So I just figured I'd throw it in there for the listeners. All right, so that is our card of the week, Gut Shot. Should we move into our main topic then?
Yeah, June
Yeah.
power rankings.
This is always my favorite show. I love the power rankings shows.
At first, I really didn't like it, but that was because we were covering the challenge at the end of every week, and I felt like it was redundant. But now I'm looking forward to them because I get to kind of see where we're at.
I just like them because they just are full of information. I don't know.
Yeah, full on
Plus,
friendship.
it's easy to talk about. You know, I just let the facts speak for themselves.
The show
I don't
notes
have
are
to-
really easy to write.
They're easy to write, but it's time consuming to gather all the data.
Yeah,
But
especially since you gather all the data.
or I feel like that should be my contribution, though. You do like everything else. I just show up and do the power rankings. All right, well, let's just jump right into it then with our first place deck. To no one's surprise, especially mine, Scred Delver was in first place with 47 points. But Sean, you actually have an interesting little graph that's showing some interesting data.
So this data is available on the Patreon. You can see this graph for free. You don't need to pay anything. Scred Delver has gone from 72 to 71 to 58 to 51 to 47. So if you're bad with numbers, that's just a steady decline. It's still head and shoulders and has never been beaten by anybody. Like the next highest deck we can talk about in just a second, but it's at 33 points. Almost 50 to down to 30. That's giant. It's losing momentum, but Scred Delver still is the top dog for sure.
Yeah, and it was actually interesting. There were only, I wish I could remember the exact numbers, but there were fewer overall Delver decks in the top 32s of these challenges than there have been in the past, which I think is contributing to this lower number. So I guess less people are playing it, or more decks are beating them out of top 32 finishes. But what really propelled Delver was its finishes. It had 5 top 4 finishes out of 5 top 8 finishes. So it never finished worse than 4th place in a challenge that it did top 8. And 2 of those finishes were wins. So it pulled a lot of points out of that, despite its decrease in popularity.
I feel like this kind of just says something about you can't be on top of a format too long without too many people gunning for you. I think that's kind of why it's losing momentum, but it's just still so strong. And we've talked about how do you beat Scred Delver, and the fact that it has Counterspell means that whatever you do, it just has a pretty good chance of just countering and locking you out of the game, because when it comes down to it, everything you're using is just a spell.
Yeah, it is known.
It is known, Khaleesi.
All right, well, should we move on to second place deck?
For sure.
Boom! Second place, 33 points, Boros Monarch. So kind of a bit of a resurgence for Boros, I guess. They were down in like the 4th place area last week, I thought, or last month.
Yeah, but that's more because some other decks gained popularity over it. Boros Monarch has held pretty steady. It's been at 33 this month, last month, and the one before that was 30. The one before that, they were at 60 points, which is kind of insane. So I think this is kind of just leveled off and found its home.
Mm-hmm. They were, in addition to being the second place deck as far as points goes, which only accounts for finishes, they were also the second place deck as far as popularity goes. There were 14 decks that made top 32 finishes.
I think as Stompy continues to go up, and if it gets more popular, I don't want to say that, because I'm not sure how that matchup is still.
I think it's okay for Boros. I think it's close, but I think Boros might be slightly less favored. I don't know. I think it depends on how many core Skyfishers they draw and how many prismatic strands they draw. It's just really hard to block, or it's really hard to attack through core Skyfisher. Elephant Guide is not great unless they have Solana Ledgewalker, because Boros can interact with your creatures so easily. And if they draw a couple copies of Prismatic Strands, you're probably not winning a race either. I don't know. That's my guess. I think Stompy might be the slight favorite, just because it can put a Elephant Guide on a Ledgewalker, and that's just probably GG's in most matchups. But Boros can handle Stompy, I think. I think it's close.
I doubt myself, because when you're playing against Stompy, you have to consider that when you go to kill their creatures, it can just kind of blow up in your face when they counter it, or they let you kill the creature and then they Hunger of the Howlpack something else.
That's true.
And since you're doing targeted removal, they've always got kind of the out of just drawing Silhana Ledgewalker. And unless they have Electrickery like up, a lot of the time that Hunger of the Howlpack ends up just going on Silhana Ledgewalker, and there's not a lot you can do to stop that. A lot of your chump blockers can no longer even interact with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I kind of forgot about Hunger of the Howlpack, so it's probably a lot worse than I actually think it is because of Hunger of the Howlpack. And I guess like Vines of the Vastwood, and they have mutagenic growth. There's just a lot of ways to protect their creatures from lightning bolts.
And I don't think we've said it yet, but Stompy is our number 3 place with 30 points.
Yep, and a total of 13 top 32 finishes and 3 top 4 finishes, which also was the amount of top 8 finishes. So every top 8 finish put them in the top 4.
Huh, that's really strong.
No, I'm a liar.
Oh.
1 top 4 finish. I need to learn my points system. 1 top 4 finish, 2 top 8 finishes.
It's still one of those decks that I'm always scared to see, because there are hands in it that you just can't beat.
Yeah.
Those burning trees, man.
Those burning trees, man. All right, 4th place, 28 points, is Mono Blue Delver. Still just strong. Mono Blue maybe a little bit better. No, I don't think that's true at all. I was going to say maybe Mono Blue's a little bit better against Stompy because it can bounce something that's big after it gets big, but I don't think that's true.
Nah, it's...
I mean, it's true that it can bounce something big.
Yeah.
I would rather have Lightning Bolt and Scred in my deck in that matchup.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
this is kind of... This is leveled off around the 30 points area.
Yeah.
Do you remember that week where it was at 50 points, just like seemingly randomly? We just...
Yeah.
Blue Delver exploded?
Yeah, that was bizarre. And I can't really... I was kind of going to try to touch on that. Like, I don't know. What is Blue Delver good against in this meta that you wouldn't rather have Scred Delver? Like, that's sort of what my thing is I mean, it's a little more consistent with its mana, but it's still, I mean, the engines are the same. It's still that Spell Stutter Sprite engine with Ninja the Depowers.
If I had to pick, I would say Affinity for sure, and Boggles, because you're just a little bit quicker because you don't have to worry about that red. Those cards are just dead, whereas in the Boggles matchup, you can actually point bounce spells at your own creatures, and it doesn't feel horrendous. At least you're getting a use out of them.
That's true. That's true. You can always bounce your guy.
And I guess control matchups like Blue-Black Alchemy and maybe even Tron. I
guess where the matchups where the burn spells are dead, the bounce spells at least have some utility.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I feel like it's just a little bit faster, too. I guess Lightning Bolt might prove me wrong, but doesn't it seem just a little bit faster?
Yeah, in a vacuum, I think it is, because it's never stumbling over its mana. It's never taking a mana off in a turn to cycle an Ash Barrens or fetch with an Evolving Wilds.
Right, okay.
Like the mana base is just 17 islands.
Ooh,
Smooth.
Tribe. I think bounce spells are a lot better against Tribe.
I think they're about the same.
Really?
Well, because if they cast Inside Out on their creature, you can still gut shot it or burn it, you know?
But in all the turns before that, bouncing a Tribe feels a lot better than trying to burn it, and they discard that useless card like you were talking about. They have to replay that while it's on the stack.
After they've cast Inside Out, it doesn't matter. Their creature's got 1 toughness.
Okay.
So they still have to have a way to counter your interaction, which is the same whether it's a burn spell or a bounce spell.
I'm saying if they're even in that phase of the game and in the turns before where burn wouldn't do anything against a Tribe because they can just discard those cards, think that edges it out to be a little bit better.
And just bouncing it and playing a tempo game?
Yeah, or just countering it on the way down again, and they have to pay 3 for their circular logic.
That's probably true. Yeah, that's probably correct. I still kind of like the idea of having red in my deck so that I can have access to Pyroblast in that matchup.
Hydroblast still does hit their...
It does hit Inside Out, but it doesn't hit Circular Logic or Dispel, which I would rather have a Pyroblast backing up my burn spell when they go for Inside Out than to have, I don't know, than to try to fight over their Inside Out.
I think both decks are... Do you think both decks are good against Tribe? But...
Yeah, I think they're both pretty good against Tribe. I don't know which one would be better placed or not, but I can see good arguments for both. So anyway, that does lead us into our 5th place decks, which tied for 24 points is Tireless Tribe and Marasatron. And so we've kind of talked a little bit about Tribe. Do you want to just talk about Marasatron?
Yeah, we've talked about how most of the top decks relate to Tribe. I think it is kind of fun to think about because it's like the best combo deck we have. But as far as Marasatron fell from its weird spike last month. Last month it was at 41 points, and it was our number 2 deck. And we were kind of just scratching our heads. And I think now that it's fallen back down to 24, which is about its average, it makes a lot more sense. I feel more comfortable with Tron being back in its place.
Yeah, that was really bizarre. And I'm not entirely sure what caused that big spike. But yeah, this feels like where Tron belongs. So, and then in 6th place with 23 points, we have Elves.
Elves might be a reason why Marasatron went down.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird matchup because it's one of those moments piece matchups, but then Elves does have like tech. The surge in Elves, though, I have to think that affected the metagame a lot because I felt that. I feel like I've faced more Elves opponents than I have for months.
I actually do, in one of the leagues I played, do remember losing to Elves a couple times.
Yeah, I played a league and I definitely win against Elves. I love seeing it every time, like with Corrupt Control, because that's just hilarious. But they haven't changed the deck list at all, and it's been all over the place. It's like tons of Elves, no Elves. Tons of Elves, no Elves.
Do you think this is just one of those cases of Pauper is continuing to grow as a format? And I don't know why, but Elves has always seemed to be the poster boy of the format to unknowns. So if people don't know Pauper very well, they do know that Elves is a deck. Just like they know that Boggles is a deck and Slivers is a deck. You know, even though these decks aren't the top of the meta, that seems to be like the common, I'm a new player getting into Pauper, I'm going to build Elves.
I think that when people realize that, one, a lot of the powerful Elves are in Pauper, and two, it's this crazy combo deck, and they see the things it does even in Pauper, and they're like, what commons can keep up with this kind of thing? That's the way like that, and just people latch onto Tribal. They're like, oh, everything's this one creature. Like, when you first start brewing, that's what you do. You're like, I love this creature type. Mine was Mirror. I just loved Mirror. I decided to build a Mirror tribal deck because it's easy to search on Gatherer for just elf tribal.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. Do you think that's having something to do with it? Or do you think that there's something about this current meta that Elves is actually well placed against that's helping propel it up into 7th place or 6th place?
I just think it's one of those things where you have to be prepared for Elves, otherwise they just run you over. And the amount of preparedness in the format in your sideboard goes up and down because of the popularity that, ebbs and flows. And so I think it going up and down is pretty much what most combo decks do. Tribe is kind of being the exception.
I feel like that argument makes sense, but in this meta it doesn't hold any water because a fourth of the decks, probably more, but just looking at the top 2 decks, Skred Delver and Boros Monarch, that makes up a fourth of the total metagame over all 4 challenges. They all play Electricity in their sideboards and Swirling Sandstorms. So that's a lot of hate, where if you're going to enter into one of these leagues and you have a 1 in 4 chance against playing against a deck that has between 3 to 4 sweepers against your deck, it just doesn't feel like a situation where people just didn't have the sideboard hate this time around.
I guess you looked at the decks a lot more intimately than I do, but if I had to, and I'm just guessing here, I would say that the number of Swirling Sandstorms this month versus like last month, that's what changed. I know that they can all run it, but whether or not they are, I think that's probably a variable that I would be looking at.
That might be something that I go back and look at and try to see if the red decks are playing less of those cards. Because maybe they are. I'm just assuming that if the Skred Delver and Boros Monarch, that they've probably got, between 2 and 3, maybe 4 copies of Swirling Sandstorms and Electricity.
I think I might have found the thing. I think Elves is just riding Stompy up the numbers. As Stompy gets more relevant, Elves gets more relevant because Elves can beat Stompy.
Okay. That makes sense.
Just tapping a Well-Wisher just puts you... Like, that and Burn. Like, the amount of life gain in Elves is pretty incredible. Okay. And if they just build themselves to be good against those 2 matchups, yeah, it's not a quarter of the meta, but it's very nearly another quarter of the meta.
Well, they also have a very good matchup against Tribe. They're just faster, and Tribe just doesn't have removal, really.
And that life gain, again, if you can get to 30 life, Tribe starts having issues.
Yeah, if you can get over 25 life, it's tricky to kill. Marasatron, we kind of touched on that. It's sort of close. It just kind of comes down to who draws the Moments pieces and if Elves draws their Flaring Pain.
Yeah, or their weird number of creatures fling effects.
Yeah. Elves, we've already kind of said, is good against Burn. Mm-hmm. Affinity, how do you feel about that matchup? I feel like a Well-Wisher is great because you can get out of range of Atog.
Well, Affinity comes down pretty early and presents lethal. Yeah, okay. And they can still... They have the key spells they need to take out the key elves.
Sure.
Just 4 Galvanic Blasts, and then a lot of the time they also run Electricity. So I want to say that that's closer to 50-50. I don't want to say that that's a factor in whether Elves does well or poor. Okay. Elves does have a really good sideboard plan. 4 Gleeful Sabotage can really just crap on Affinity.
Okay. I imagine Elves also has a really good Boggles matchup.
I would imagine.
Like a mix of Well-Wisher and the elf that makes your elves big for all your elves. Like you're just
and then
you're
the
just
number
always win a race against Boggles.
I don't know about always, because
I guess, like, yeah, if you don't draw your Well-Wisher and your Elvish guy, to make your Elves big guy.
Yeah, and, you know, Timberwatch, right?
Yeah, Timberwatch Elf, yeah.
Boggles a lot of the time has trample, so it's not really worth it to block with all your elves.
Right,
And
but if you're just gaining back what they hit you for and then cracking them with a huge thing, like, I imagine your guy's going to get bigger than their Boggle, and you're going to gain more life than they're dealing each turn. So it's like, the Boggles player cracks you for 12, all right, I'll gain 13 life this turn and then crack you for 14, you know?
I just know that it's not unreasonable, without any interaction, for Boggles to hit 20 or 30 power. I guess once I factor in the sideboard and that elves can actually just blow up those problem enchantments, that's pretty convincing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I mean, Boggles isn't a super relevant part of the metagame, but I'm just kind of going through the list of everything and trying to decide what that matchup looks like, because I guess the more we're talking about it, it's like they're a dog to a fourth of the metagame, and then they seem to be pretty well placed against the other 3/4. So I guess that's not a place that I wouldn't want to be in. Like, I have a 1 in 4 chance of playing against a matchup that's really hard to beat, and then I have a 3 out of 4 chance of playing against something that I have a good matchup with, or that wouldn't be too difficult for me to beat, or that I have tools to beat.
Yeah. And plus with your backup of, there are just those unbeatable hands that even if they have counter spells and burn, you just power through it. Like, couple Lead the Stampedes that...
I mean, sometimes they don't draw Electrickery on time.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they need to spend the turn that they need to be Electrickering, fetching up their red source, and they can't Electrickery.
Yeah, they have to develop their board at some point.
Yeah, so... Alright. Okay, I'm convinced. Elves seems fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the flavor of the week. It's actually, I think it's got some staying power in the meta.
I'm just saying, if Corrupt Control makes this list, Elves goes to 0. I'm kidding, but...
All right, what was that, 7th place? 7th place now, with 21 points, is Burn, which is exactly where it was last month? 21 points? Or is it... It's in that...
No, it was
realm.
exactly 21 points last month.
It was exactly 21 points last month. Okay. I did see, like, some burn decks that were playing Thermal Alchemist. That's the pinger guy, right? The 1/3 tap?
0/3, but yeah.
0/3, yeah, okay. But the one thing I did see is that every single burn deck did have 4 copies of G2 Lava Runner.
Wow, that card is the real deal. That's 2 months now that card has pushed burn from its old average 8 to 10 points up to 21. That's double.
Yeah, I think we definitely ate our words. G2 Lava Runner is a card.
Yeah, that's so bad that we didn't... Like, and I'm looking back on that and I'm like, the power level on this card!
Yeah, it's so bad. Well, I think that we weren't necessarily saying the card itself was bad. We just were, I think, fixated on the fact that one of Burn's strengths is that it turns off removal. And so it blanks so many cards in so many decks by not having creatures that it sort of gains, percentage points that way, where it's like, you look at your hand in game 1 and you have 3 removal spells. Well, you just mulligan to 4 against Burn. And we were so fixated on that we're like, well, adding G2 Lava Runner to that just changes that completely. But I think we did underestimate just the actual power level of the card.
Well, they're replacing a creature with a creature. So it's more like the blockers. Like, before they never attacked, and now they have to worry about everything besides blockers.
They did have creatures before, didn't they?
Yeah, they replaced Firebrand Archer.
The Firebrand Archer. Okay, I forgot about that card.
Yeah, but they got to replace a 2/1 with a 2/2.
Yeah,
that can actually attack.
Yeah. 8th place, 14 points. We have Affinity, and I feel like this is kind of up there for Affinity.
Yeah, this is back up there. So in April they had 0 decks. So 2 months ago there were 0 decks, And then the months surrounding that 0 were down around, one was 4 and one was 9. I think this is back around where it should be. I was always surprised to see Affinity go, but I think there's enough decks that take unique sideboard slots that Affinity is in a really good place now to come back. The Swirling Sandstorm still do the trick.
Yeah, right. So then we have 9th place on 12 points, Familiars. There were only 4 decks that made top 32 appearances. There was a 2nd place finish, a top 8 finish, and then 2 top 32 finishes.
This is the first time that we've talked about Familiars in our Power Rankings show.
Yeah, and it's up there.
It's respectable.
Middle of the pack.
I've always been terrified of Familiars, and I never want to face it.
Yeah, I think it's a good deck. I think it's a little tricky to play, and I'm not super familiar with it, but I hate that so much. Because I'm not doing that on purpose.
Which familiar? Disfamiliar.
Shut up. Moving on. I don't even have anything else to say. 10th place, 11 points, Bogles. Bogles.
Bogles.
Boglays.
Bogles.
Bogless.
Boggles. This is I think around. Boggles hasn't moved much. They had a dip a little bit ago. I think that we were scratching our heads because both of us kind of liked Boggles. I think last month our logic was that Boggles isn't good against like Scred Delver because they can fly over and counterspells just keep them off of being able to make anything big.
Yeah, and they have such few threats that one well-placed Electrickery can kind of end the game, or, a Swirling Sandstorm or something. And so I do like where Boggles is placed, though, just because I think any of these decks that have sort of a combo finish or are very linear, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, is I still just think that, unless you're playing one of the decks with the best interaction, which is Scred Delver, because you have Counterspell, you have Spellstar Sprite, and you have such efficient creatures and disruption, you should be playing something very linear. I really don't like Boros Monarch, and maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like Boros Monarch, when I look at like the power level of all the other decks in the format, I feel like Boros Monarch is really low. It has mediocre interaction, it has mediocre threats. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say mediocre. They're very good by what Pauper's power level should be. Like, I think Boros is perfect for what Pauper's power level should be.
Yeah.
But then I look at these crazy linear decks, and then I look at Scred Delver that has Counterspell, Gush, and Boros just doesn't line up with those.
Just so many of the creatures in the format, like, you can burn them. And
right.
We all have to use creatures.
Problem. That's the problem, is that all these decks are playing... People are trying to play with silly things when... Just play a hexproof creature. Play Stompy. Go too wide. Just interact in a way... Or kill your opponent on a level that Boros can't interact with. And there's a lot of that, but...
I think it just suffers from... It's so all in on the one plan that it can't control its bad matchups. Like...
Sure.
I think playing something with... Like Boros Monarch that has, 8 bolts essentially, bolts and better, it levels out your win-loss percentage across the board, whereas Boggles, it's going to be like way up, way down, like, okay, I'm 90% to win this matchup, but I never win this matchup, right?
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of variance in these decks, in these linear decks, where Boros doesn't have that variance.
Yeah.
Boros is very 50-50, but from a spike perspective, trying to win a tournament, if there was no Scred Delver, if that deck didn't exist, I would never touch Stompy or never touch Boros Monarch. Like I would choose a deck that was so linear,
Like Stompy.
you know. Yeah, I would choose like Stompy, or I would choose Boggles, or I would choose Elves. You know, I would choose something that I'm going to take those risks of, if I get paired with this matchup, I'm 20% to win if they draw their interaction. But there's always the chance they don't draw it, and then there's that 55% of games that I just steal that no one could beat me.
Oh, well, okay. So 2 decks that aren't super dissimilar, but they're both the kind of deck you're talking about. I'm talking about Stompy and Boggles. Why is one at 30 points and one at 11 points? And I think it's because a deck like Stompy deals better with those decks that are actually interacting with it. That's why I don't favor Boggles. It's good, I just think that it suffers too much from those weird bad matchups.
Yeah, I don't favor Boggles either, but I think that one of the problems is one of its worst matchups is Scred Delver.
Yeah.
And my example, I'm thinking in a world where Scred Delver doesn't exist. You know, I think Boggles gets a lot better. I think Boggles is a place you'd want to be. I'm not saying it's the place to be.
Yeah.
It's the same reason it doesn't take over a format like Modern, because even though it has a lot of those oops, I win games, there are still just randomly you just get paired against something weird. Randomly they draw this crazy sideboard card. You know, there's like Mono Blue Delver could just go back to playing tons of copies of Auraflux. You know, so I'm not saying that like Boggles should be better than any of these decks. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say that I think that these linear decks are probably better tournament choices, better meta choices than any of these decks that are trying to interact. You know, and I think Boros tries to be too fair. It tries to interact too fairly. And I would rather play something that gives me I don't have to try to interact with you. I just need to know how to beat your interaction. And then I'm going to just have all those, you know, every once in a while I'm going to get blown out by some sideboard tech, you know, but I'm going to get a lot of free wins and I'm going to get a lot of close matchups. And
I think the reason that Boros Monarch is still so far up there, even though like all of the points you're saying is like, yeah, it matches up weird and it's not super linear or aggressive. It's just the amount of card advantage that it has. Huh?
It's just consistent.
Yeah. The amount of card advantage it has can just drown out enough people.
Yeah. I mean, that's all they really have to do is get, you know, they just have to draw their right interaction at the right time. But
anyway, so next up in 11th place, we have Blue-Black Alchemy with 10 points. I think that this has definitely been decreasing, and I think it's going to continue to decrease as long as Stompy continues to increase.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that Mono Blue Alchemy falls into my Boros Monarch argument, but like 10 times worse.
Yeah, because the win con is that much slower. Their answers are a lot better, but you know they don't have that crutch of just amazing card advantage.
Yeah, and their draws can be kind of clunky, where it's like, I don't know, like sometimes they just have to cast a Forbidden Alchemy this turn, or they, you know, are playing a tapped land and don't have blue for counterspell. It's sometimes they just draw a Disfigure when they really needed Doomblade. Yeah, I don't know.
I think Blue-Black Alchemy is going to continue to go down, and I would see that as a good reason for Boggles to go up. I know that Alchemy is one of those deck lists that can just make life really hard for Boggles. They can counterspell those important enchantments, and then they do run Chainer's Edict. Yeah,
and I think that that's sort of the big takeaway here is that, yeah, Boggles will do better whenever, you know, Alchemy's on the downtrend, but I think that Alchemy is on the downtrend solely because of Edict effects. I feel like they rely too heavily on their edicts as a crutch. And edicts are bad, really bad right now. You know, think about, you know, Boros Monarch. do you really want to edict their Thraben Inspector? No.
Yeah, not to mention
Stompy.
Battle Screech. Stompy,
Yeah.
they don't even
Stompy.
have to put Young Wolf in their deck right now. And
Yeah. Burning Tree Emissary comes with a friend or two on the second turn. And you're like, your edicts don't do anything.
they come with a Nest Invader a lot of the time.
Yeah, holy gosh. Yeah, and then what do you do?
Yeah.
And Scred Delver, yeah, on all these blue decks. I'm not going to just say Scred Delver, but I'm going to say all these blue decks have Augur Bolus. And it's the same argument as Thraben Inspector. I don't want to one-for-one removal a spell that got another spell. You know, you edict their Thraben Inspector, you're down a card. You edict their Augur Bolus, you're most likely down a card, unless you're unlucky like me and whiff on your Augurs all the time.
It is kind of interesting, though, that I felt like Blue-Black Alchemy should be suffering more than it is, especially with, like, Elves. That's another one we haven't even talked about. There's all of these, you know, bad matchups, but it's still so, like, its spells are good, and it does maintain at least its sliver of the meta pretty consistently, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think that that's just because it's good against the nonsense. And you're going to play against a lot of nonsense when you play Pauper. It's not all Scred, Delver, and Stompy, you know? Like, everyone, you're going to play against Is It Blitz? You know, you're going to play against Boggles. You're going to play against...
Heroic.
You know, heroic. Places where your edicts are just the best cards in the format.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of that kind of stuff running around, and I think that's enough to propel Alchemy into top 32 finishes. But I don't think we haven't seen one make a top 8 in a long time.
Yeah.
It's always mid to low pack top 32 finishes, you know, top 25 finishes, top 30 finishes. So pretty mediocre results overall, and I think that's just because it can beat the nonsense. But it can't win when it gets up into those winners brackets, when it's actually narrowed down and it's playing against, you know, these top 4 decks.
Ironically enough, another Chainer's Edict deck is our next point. Deck number 12. It has 8 points. It's mono black control, which it has been down to 0 earlier this year for 2 months in a row, actually. Its line slowly inching up there, but I think this is kind of a result of, again, Stompy doing well. The life gain is really nice in this deck. Mono Black Control is actually a really good deck against Scred Delver, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, Pestilence is hard to beat.
Yeah, they are running a single Pestilence now, but just like Chittering Rats 2-for-1ing you, and then just having a bunch of guys, and then stabilizing with a...
Kumbah Witches?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Kumbah Witches is a must answer in that matchup.
Yeah, it's like an auto win.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be able to bolt it or Scred it right away, or it's just gonna mow down creatures.
Right. In 13th place...
And, well, I do want to make one more point, though. We were just so down on decks that had edict effects in them, and now we're kind of praising mono black control a little bit. But I kind of want to make it clear that's because mono black control doesn't rely on its edicts as much as blue black alchemy does.
True.
The fact that it has pestilence and it has Kumbah Witches and it has ways to deal with silly little creatures are what make it great. Where I still think that the edicts are the worst cards in that deck in this metagame.
Those cards do make the value of your edicts a lot higher, because every time they're most likely going to be hitting a better creature. So it's working a little bit to still play those edicts and have them good. And I believe that they're cutting them. They're not at 4. They're either at like 2 or 3.
Yeah, and that's sounds right. So should we go to number 13? Is that where we're on now?
Yeah, number 13.
13th place, 7 points is It Blitz? And I made a note. There were 3 total Is It Blitz decks that had top 32 finishes. 2 top 32 finishes and 1 top 8 finish. All 3 of these decks had 4 copies of Delver of Secrets.
Isn't it... when Delver just creeps its way into a deck list that if you use normal logic, it's not good in because it's not on the same plan. Yeah, you're trying to deal damage, but Izzet Blitz does it all at once. It's going off plan, and it's still like one of the best cards you can play because Delver's just that strong. Doesn't
I would argue that it's not going off plan. It's just changing the plan. You still have those oops I win games with Izzet Blitz where you just one shot them, but Delver of Secrets in your deck it helps them be more of a mid-range deck or an aggro deck. You know, it gives them those games where it's like, I can't deal you a lethal amount of damage in one turn, but I can break it up over 2 or 3 turns, and you're less susceptible to removal because you're not going all in on a single creature.
It's a very good lightning bolt or lightning rod because
that's true too. Yeah,
a lot of the reason they
yeah,
maybe that again is because Edict, you're always still gonna have to kill your Augur of Bolas, but maybe I'm just thinking of Edicts too much right now, and that's not a factor. It's just, I really think it's just Delver's that good. I mean, it's not so off-plan as something like Milver.
Yeah, the mill Delvers don't make sense. The only reason they're there is because Delver's broken.
Yeah.
But I think that Delvers in this deck makes sense. But
yeah,
I still don't think it's great that we have a 1-drop this powerful that any blue deck can just put it in there and it's going to make them better. Whether it's on plan or not, or you can make an argument for being it on plan or whatever. It's just, Delver is just the most broken 1-drop in this format, and it's not close. And so, what are we on, 14? Yep. 14th place with 5 points is Blue White Tron. And this is one that's also never made an appearance in our power rankings.
Yeah, I had to write this on the list. If it has, I deemed it as so irrelevant with probably 2 points that I didn't put it on the list because we're already at... I deleted a lot this week, so we're back down to 33, but we were at 38 when I wrote this on the list. So 5 points is relevant enough. I think this deck is basically like, is Fog good right now? And if we see more Elves and Stompy, yes it is.
Yeah, Prismatic Strands is a really good card in this meta right now. And this blue-white deck has a bunch of those. And
the Stonehorn Dignitary.
Oh yeah, Stonehorn Dignitary. Yes, that guy.
It's also very good against Ninja, I guess. Just if you can never attack or deal combat damage.
That's true.
You'll never draw cards.
That's very true. So our next deck, 15th place with 4 points. We have a 2-way tie between Red Deck Wins and Mono White Heroic.
I'm sad for Red Deck Wins. It was doing its best. It was right up around 8 or 9 points for a while, and then it's back down to 4 points. I want to believe.
It might just be that if you're going to play a mono red deck, just play Burn.
And if you're going to play a small creature deck, just play Stompy?
Yeah, I think so. And if you're going to play Heroic, just play Boggles? I don't know. I think Heroic has...
It's got its own merits.
Yeah, the one merit, the biggest takeaway I have for Heroic over a deck like Boggles is the 0-4. What is that guy's name? I can never say his name.
Lagana Band Trailblazer?
Yeah, that guy. It's just so incredibly hard to deal with if you play a 0-4 on turn 1. Because you can Electrickery now. And by the time you get to Swirling Sandstorm, it's already big. You can't bolt it. You can scred it, but you got to wait till turn 4. And by turn 4, it's got 10 toughness.
And you're not attacking with anything with less than 4 power, which, you're not probably playing ever.
What are you talking about? Less than 4 power?
No, if, you now have a 4 toughness blocker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I'm not thinking about blocking in Heroic, though. You're usually thinking about attacking, but, yeah, your creatures are not getting through that.
I think they think about it all the time. Okay, they play one of those. Turn 2, they play Lone Missionary, not Lone Missionary, Seeker of the Way. That's what I'm thinking of. I get those two mixed up. You play Seeker of the Way, and now, okay, what do I enchant? I'm just going to enchant this Seeker of the Way, and my Trailblazer's just going to hold the ground forever.
I guess. From the times I played Heroic, I don't know that I ever want to put an enchantment on Seeker of the Way. That just is too fragile.
Against Stompy?
Okay, yeah, against Stompy it's different, but against like 3/4 of the meta, I want to put my enchantments on my 0/4 because it can never die.
Okay.
Like, yeah, and like the Seeker of the Way is just gonna get big naturally. Like, you know, I'm gonna put 2 enchantments on my guy this turn, crack you with a 4/8, crack you with a 4/4 lifelink.
I've had it matter in matchups that I've played against it. Maybe I'm probably playing Jank.
I don't know. You also don't play decks that have Lightning Bolt in them, and so the dynamic of that matchup is different. If my opponent can kill my Seeker of the Way with damage-based removal or like a -- effect, like against a black deck, I'm never gonna open my guy up to getting disfigured.
Barring that it's those 2 creatures, I'm just saying if you play 2 Trailblazers or you're not ready to attack yet, those block a lot and really well. I know that happens, is they do block a lot and let you buy time.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue that they're not
fantastic. Oh, that's all I was saying.
No, you were saying that you want to pants up your Seeker of the Way so that you can sit with a 0/4.
That's the example I used, but my point...
bad example.
My point... was just
point.
They draw them late all the time, and you're like, crap, now they have an invincible blocker that can randomly get a mutagenic on it, and I lose my creature that's attacking.
Yeah, that's a fine point. But
in 16th place, with 2 points, we have blue-white midrange, which Brandon explained to me what this deck was, and I was horrified.
It was Court Husser, Core Skyfisher, I think Agrobolus, I think it had Muldrifter, it had a bunch of copies of Prismatic Strands, and it had a Momentary Blink in it. It was a weird deck.
Just saying, this is one of those decks that I don't put on our power rankings list. They stay in the document in case it ever gets popular. I can be like, this is the first time we saw it. It was this month. But moving on.
Yeah.
We have green-white slivers. This is the low bar of the format. That's what I consider it. If I can't beat slivers, I can't do nothing.
Yeah, slivers isn't very good.
Right. We just made a lot of our listeners very angry, especially the people who are just trying out Pauper and trying to figure it out and are listening to our podcast. People love slivers.
Look, let me take it from here.
Okay, thank you.
I own 4 copies of Sliver Queen. All right? I have a Japanese one, I have a Chinese one, I have an English one, I have an English one, and I would have a Korean one if Sean hadn't talked me out of buying it at Vegas.
You have a problem.
Slivers are the greatest. They're my favorite. They're so cool. But they're not good in Pauper. And I'm telling you this as a friend. Because from me to your ears, I love you. And I want you to do well at Pauper.
Okay.
And you're not going to do that playing slivers, all right? They're not good.
That's a Spike perspective.
Yeah, that's a Spike's perspective. But if you want to play slivers and they're fun and that's what you enjoy playing, you can play slivers. And you can go 3-2 in a league or 2-3 in a league pretty consistently.
Yeah, like,
and you'll have a blast.
You'll get wins. Like, they're fun at FNM when you're joking around with your friends. You'll have games where they're just massive. The games where you're winning just feel amazing. You're like, nothing can ever beat this, because at that point in the game, nothing can ever beat that.
Yeah, but then, like, if your opponent plays like a Disfigure and then an Edict, and you're going into turn 3 and you have 0 creatures on board, it's just a bad place to live.
And they're just getting further and further ahead on card advantage. Yeah, that's what happens to slivers.
Yeah. So, but because this is a Spike podcast, more or less, we are trying to give our listeners the best chance of going into a challenge and winning.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to do. So we're going to give you the hard truth. Slivers are bad, and you're probably not going to win a challenge with them. I will eat my fist if someone goes and wins a challenge with slivers. I will eat it, and we will film it, and it will be on the Patreon for the patrons to watch me eating my fist.
Wow.
I will eat it. It will be gone. I will chew through the marrow in my bones.
If they print a new card that makes it good, that's a different story. But
that's a different story.
Right.
Slivers as it is now, let's preface this. Slivers as it is now will never win a challenge. Never say never, Justin Bieber.
Except when it comes to slivers.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a Fido moves to America? I don't know.
Are you talking about Fifel Goes West?
Yes. No, Fido moves to America.
That sounds like Fifel Goes West to me.
All right, yeah. Isn't there a song called Never Say Never?
Yeah, it's a Justin Bieber song.
No.
Never say never. We just lost more listeners than we did with the Slivers comment.
All right, now we're at 0 listeners, so we can talk about Blue Red Ninja.
Hooray! This was a blue-red deck that didn't have Delver's secrets in it. It was just the Fairies package and Ninja the Deep Hours.
Or Snowlands.
Oh, no, this one had Snowlands. This one had Scred.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whew.
This was Blue-Red Ninja.
Okay, we also
Scred.
have... I'm going to skip this next one and go straight to this one. We also have Blue-Red Scredless Delver.
Yeah, so this was a Delver deck. So the first deck had no Delvers in it. It was a Scred Delver deck with no Delvers in it. This next deck is a Delver deck. What did I say? I'm so confused. The Blue-Red Ninja deck had no Delvers in it. It was a Scred deck without Delvers. I think that's what I said, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The next deck is a Delver deck with no Screds. It was a Blue-Red deck with no Screds, and it had Swiftwater Cliffs, and it had all sorts of stuff, but no Screds and no Snowlands.
And part of me just wants to add all of those points back up into Scred Delver because Is it
no?
Okay, well, is it going to change?
Because there's no Scred. There's no Scred in there.
It doesn't change how you play against the deck, though. Like, as far as like a person who wants to look at the metagame, I think that Scred Delver should just be now at 51 points instead of 47.
Why 51?
Because both of these decks have 2 points.
Yeah, but the Blue-Red Ninja doesn't even have Delvers in it.
But aren't, the other 70 cards the same?
No. Pretty much, yeah. But no. I control the power rankings.
That he does.
And this is what I have said. Blue-Red Ninja and Scredless Delver will not be lumped in with Scred.
I spoke my piece.
And it was shaken down.
And
you're probably right. Like, you do play against these decks in almost the exact same fashion. They're tempo decks trying to get through with efficient creatures removal and an efficient engine, but...
Hey, we said it with Tron. I'll say it here. If you can get 40 turns into a deck, or into a game, or 20 turns into a game, and still not realize that it's not the same deck, it's the same deck.
I don't know. I think it would be pretty easy when my opponent plays a Swiftwater Cliffs and a Delver of Secrets in the same deck. I would know immediately that it was different.
But in your mind, you'll go, this is bad Delver.
No, well, sure. But also, I would know that I don't have to play around Scred. And that would change the entire dynamic of how that game plays out. The Blue-Red Ninja, I'll make an argument. Because I could just say they never drew a Delver of Secrets, and I would still play against that deck exactly the same. And I would still think about everything, sideboarding everything going forward with the idea that they could play a Delver of Secrets on turn 1. But this Scredless deck, I think it's different enough. I actually do. I think that not having Scred changes enough about the dynamic of the deck, and seeing something as simple as what the mana is. All they have to do is play a non-snow covered island or a Swiftwater Cliffs, and I know immediately that there is not Scred in that deck. And that will change how I play that game.
I mean, it wouldn't change anything if that person could afford Snowlands to just put Snowlands and Swiftwater Cliffs in there.
No,
and
you're
you'll
right.
just be like, why is this in there? It's probably the same deck. I'm expecting a Scred still.
Honestly, if I saw Swiftwater Cliffs at all, I would be on the realm of there's probably not a Scred in there, but I would still try to not play into it if I could avoid it. But I would definitely still err on the side of they don't have Scred in their deck.
I think we're way off the point, though.
No, I don't think we
No,
are.
I mean, I'm just...
I think this is exactly the point that you're trying to make, is that they're the same, and I'm trying to tell you that they're not. And I've just proven you wrong, and so now you're going to say that...
I mean, just like, we're way off of where they are in the power rankings point that we started the show on.
Oh, because they're on 2 points, and you're probably never, ever going to play against a blue-red Delver deck that doesn't have Scred in it? Actually,
Yeah.
I don't think that's true. I think that you might play against this deck a lot more than you'd think, just because not everyone has Snowlands. There's still a huge chunk of...
Don't they have 28 players, or 28 points, and just play Mono Blue Delver?
They probably do, but obviously this person decided that they weren't playing Mono Blue Delver, that there was merit to putting Swiftwater Cliffs in their deck, to just play Lightning Bolt and have access to red sideboard cards. So I'm sure you're going to play against a deck like this, not often, but I'm sure that's there. People who just can't afford Snowlands that think there's merit to having red cards. And I could make an argument for playing a blue-red deck without Snowlands just to have access to Lightning Bolts, Electrickeries, Pyroblasts.
Yeah.
I guess if they don't have Snowlands, they might not have Pyroblasts either. But
can I move on to the last place deck?
No. Yes. All right. Fine.
Okay. It's Black-White Pestilence.
What's the biggest difference between this and Mono Black?
Mono Black is good. I'm just kidding.
Why? Why is it good? Was my leading question. What does taking white out? Because white, you get access to some decent removal spells. You get Core Skyfisher.
What removal spells? There's Journey to Nowhere.
Yeah, that's like one of the best removal spells in the format.
I think the biggest draw is that you can play Guardian of the Guild Pact. And yeah, Core Skyfisher. Like, things to keep your Pestilence around.
Sure.
I think what's bad is you have to win the game by attacking, which is incredibly slow. Not to say that Corrupt Control isn't, or Mono Black, Corrupt, whatever, isn't also incredibly slow, but I think it's way easier to do because you just buy time more.
You think you buy more time without having those creatures in your deck?
Yeah, because just everything in your deck is a removal spell.
Oh, sure, I guess. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know. To me, in my head, it makes sense that like you have those efficient creatures that can attack really well, and then that gets you ahead so that, your Pestilences and stuff are just like burn spells that win the race. Like that mixed with your removal is just like, crack you for a couple damage with my Core Skyfisher, kill your guy, and now my Pestilence can just like hit you for 8.
One major thing is that Pestilence in Mono Black is way easier to activate than in Black-White.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
'Cause you can only use black mana on it.
So the turn you play it, on average, even on like turn 7, Black-White Pestilence can activate it for like 2.
Maybe like 3 or 4, maybe.
On turn 7, at most it's 3.
Why?
Because you've only had 7 land drops.
So why couldn't it be 7?
Oh, I guess I'm talking about if you play it and activate it the same turn. Like if you rip it off the top,
okay,
throw it on the
get
field.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's true in any deck if you play it on turn 7. Even in Mono Black, the most you can activate it for is 3.
I'm saying that a lot of the time in Black-White, it's going to be for 1 to 2. In Black-White, it's 1 to 2. And in Mono Black, it can be 4. because you make a land drop every turn and you bobble in an extra one.
Okay.
Like your board, I think it just having a better board wipe is worth it.
Sure. Okay.
Oh, before we finish up, do we want to go over the decks that didn't get any points?
Sure. Yeah, if there's some big ones.
So Rallygond hasn't placed at all this month. Delver Mill is gone. Mono Green Tron didn't make an appearance. Mono Black Land Destruction. Finally, that Grixis Metalcraft deck that I was just like, what is this doing? How does this keep getting 2 points? It's finally gone. I don't know why that deck makes me so mad. I'm just like, you shouldn't exist. And it just kept existing. Maybe the one guy who was playing it really well just got busy in the summer.
Or got bored of it, picked up something else.
And then there's a lot of blue-black and... Like, blue-black Delver hasn't made a top 32 in 2 months. And then there's a whole bunch of, like, blue-red decks that were just janky stuff like the Scredless Delver and Blue-Red Ninja. There's, like, Flicker and Pieces of the Puzzle. There's a bunch of those decks that didn't make it. But I think those 2 colors just generate weird fringe decks.
Alrighty, cool. Well, that is our power rankings then for June. So, anything else that you want to add about this?
Yeah, I think I've said everything that I wanted to.
All right, so that was the show, everyone, for June, our power rankings. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget, you can check out our sponsor, puremtgo.com, for some awesome articles, podcasts, and deck lists, all sorts of great stuff. You can email us any questions, comments, concerns at commonknowledgemtg@gmail.com. Don't forget to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/commonknowledge. We've got a lot of cool stuff brewing. We've still got our $50 stretch goal for the 5-card blind tournament. There's information on the Patreon site for that if you want to know what that is.
I'm so excited for that.
I kind of am too. It's really cool. And other than that, Sean, if anyone wants to get a hold of you and talk to you about your awesome Corrupt Control deck, where can they do that?
They can go on YouTube and search for Lobbert, Lobbert, and they can also follow me on Twitter and listen to me talk about the show or anything I'm posting on my YouTube channel at Lobbert8, number 8. Where can they find you?
And you guys can find me on Twitter also at bclark_CK. And you can also follow the show at CK Podcast MTG. And I don't think we've ever talked about this, but we started our own Facebook page.
We did last week.
Yeah, I think it was like a couple weeks ago, but it's starting to gain a little bit of traction. So yeah, you can go on to that and you can find other members of the Pauper community, people who listen to the show, and you can discuss whatever you want to discuss, Pauper stuff.
Yeah.
You can do that. Common Knowledge Facebook page.
See ya.
All right, bye forever.
Common Knowledge is part of the Constructed Criticism Network.